Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for being here today. We're so excited about this conversation. My name is Melissa Wilson, and I am the School Success Coordinator for the Positivity Project. I recently transitioned from teaching special education in Raleigh, North Carolina this past March. So I'm so excited to connect with you all and hear from our co-founder and one of our very own principals, Matt McLaughlin, also from Raleigh, North Carolina. I'm going to start just by grounding us in our mission and our vision at P2, because we have some seasoned partners, we have some prospective partners, and some brand new partners on the call. So the Positivity Project is an organization that works to empower school community members to build positive relationships to become their best selves. And we do that through partnering with schools across the country and equipping them with strategy, resources, and training to teach positive psychology's 24 character strengths. So we'll start today with our co-founder, Mike Erwin, sharing a little bit about himself and the work that's led him to P2, specifically in the Catholic setting. So Mike, I'll turn it over to you first.
All right. Thanks so much, Melissa. And greetings from a Panera Bread in snowy Syracuse, New York. I'm actually dressed up more formally than you might have seen me maybe ever. I actually was up here for my uncle passed away. And so we had his Catholic Mass and burial today. So I came right from there in the celebration of life to over here. So it's really great to be here today. A little bit background on myself. So I went to West Point, class of 2002. I did 13 years on active duty in the Army. And part of that time was when I went back to the Army sent me back to grad school at the University of Michigan, where I studied positive psychology and leadership. And then I went on and became an assistant professor in psychology and leadership at the U.S. Military Academy, where I would teach future Army officers about how to think about what they think about and how they act. In other words, the study of psychology. So, that had a deep impact on the Positivity Project. So when Jeff and I came together in 2015, hard to believe, 7 years ago, we started thinking about how can we continue to take our knowledge of what we learned in the military, specifically character, how to be a better human being and a better leader and a better citizen, and bring that thinking to the future of our country. That's when we came up with this idea of the Positivity Project. But what's really interesting as it ties into the Catholic faith is that, so I'm a lifelong, cradle Catholic, from Syracuse, New York, but I was living in North Carolina at the time. And one of my good friends from West Point, a special forces officer, said, "Hey, we don't have a Catholic high school here in Moore County. So for any student who wanted to attend a Catholic high school, they would have had to drive all the way up to Raleigh, about an hour and 10 minutes away." And so that's when we launched Father Vincent Capodanno High School. And so for the past 5 years, I'm the co-founder and the chairman of the board for that school. And I've really taken a lot of what we've learned in the Positivity Project about character and about the application of character to a faith-based setting, and also settings certainly beyond, our faith. And we've been able to apply that, to our model at Father Capodanno High School. But as it pertains particularly, to your school, and as you're considering, or as you're getting this off the ground, or in the case of St. Michael's, right, who's been like one of our first 33 schools. And I'm so excited to be here from Matt, because, what they have done at St. Michael's is remarkable. When I think about like the role of positive psychology and how it intersects, with the Catholic faith, to me, it's pretty clear. Right? It boils down to the importance of learning how to be a good human being. And I'll never forget something that one of our early on first Catholic principals talked about, is that, our students in the Catholic school, first of all, not all of them are Catholic, right? We know that. But they go out and they play on sports teams and they live in communities and they interact with people, right? And kids, who may and are often not Catholic. And so like having this vocabulary and understanding the 24 character strengths and how to see that in themselves and others, and having that language was going to be advantageous to them and helping them to build relationships with people, outside of, their faith and outside of the school. Right. And so that was a big part of why, this from early on, it was very important to me, to understand like how important, this character strength vocabulary is, to supporting faith-based schools. Right. Final thing I'll say before I turn it over to Matt is like, this, at the end of the day, the Positivity Project, we are about helping to build better human beings, right? It's through the consistency of the conversations and everything from the videos and the activities and the poems and the conversation, and everything we do is geared towards that Northern Star of how do we help to build better human beings who can better relate to other humans. And I think that is not only a critically important life skill, but certainly what we're called to as Catholics to be able to do, right? Whether it's, through living out our faith, evangelizing and talking, to other people about like why we believe in our faith. And so to me, as I turn it to Matt to get into some of the incredible work that they've done, like that's what makes me so proud. It makes me so proud as I know that the Positivity Project is doing that. It's empowering teachers in their level in the classrooms to help them to build better people, right? And that's something I think that we all strive to do, in our lives, especially in the education field. So thanks so much for being here today. And I'm looking forward, I already know a little bit about what Matt, because we had a pre-call, so I know about some of the incredible work that they've done there, but really looking forward to you seeing and learning from what he's done. So thanks a lot.
Yeah, thank you, Mike. Thank you, Melissa. I'm glad you all are here, and it's really just a conversation. I'm going to kind of outline some of the things that we have done and continue to do. But I think, Mike, I'm actually going to start by kind of taking the, on the tails of one of the things you just said. Part of the program of P2 is to build better human beings. But as Catholics, the way we would say that is just to get to heaven, right? It's the same end, and so that's the whole point, I think, of this call, is to help all of us be able to draw more direct and explicit connections between the great stuff that P2 puts out there and how that connects to our Catholic faith and our Catholic values, because a lot of the things are really easy to do. The values of positive psychology, in a lot of ways, are the values of our Catholic faith. It helps that Mike has a Catholic background and upbringing, right? And so it's, P2 may not be explicitly Catholic, but it kind of is. And I think that's kind of that's the point of this call, and I think that's the connection we're going to try to make. I am at St. Michael's School in Cary, North Carolina. It was right outside of Raleigh, so we're just down the road from Mike, just down the road from Melissa. This is my 4th year at this school. It's about 15 years in the Diocese of Raleigh. And, St. Michael, Mike already said, we were one of those 33 pilot schools. And so it's been, 7 years or so that we've been really immersed in P2, and we subscribed to it really early on. And so, some of our 8th graders, the kids that have been around for many years, they're pretty well versed with some of this language, this vocabulary, and the concepts behind it. And our school is, it's been a part of our fabric of our school for a long time. So and I think some of the people, from what I understand, Melissa, some other schools on this call are in that same boat. They've been around, they've at least been doing it for a couple of years, right? There's others that are either just started or are about to start, and so they're brand new to it. And one of the things I wanted to say was that St. Michael is actually a little bit of both and, because we were one of those pilot schools, and that has been part of our fabric for a long time. But, admittedly, COVID, we lost a little bit of momentum with it. And unfortunately, it admittedly did drop down the priority list of pushing this and making this at the forefront. And so I'm not sure I like the phrase rebuilding, but we're also kind of in that rebuilding phase, and getting more buy-in, because also with our staff, we did a lot of professional development early on, but the PD, the staff that received that PD in those first couple of years, there's been some turnover. So there's some staff here that haven't had any official and formal professional development on this. So we're kind of both in. We've been in it for a long time. We love it, and it's a big part of our school, but also we're in a little bit of rebuilding. So I'm also part of this conversation, right? That, hoping to hear some ideas and some thoughts from all of you, and how things that are working for you all. I did want to, one of the things I'm going to highlight is our middle school house system. But before we get into that, just some of the things that are a little bit more kind of general. I was talking with some of our our younger grades teachers, so we're a pre-K to 8 school with about 520 kids. And, I was asking some of the teachers, the kindergarten teachers, first grade, second grade, how their conversations go. Because I'm a middle school guy. That's where my bread and butter is middle school. Put me in a kindergarten classroom and I'm a little lost, right? And so, those kindergarten teachers, how do they have these same conversations? What is a conversation about bravery? How does that look like for a 4-year-old versus a 14-year-old? And one of their ideas was just, how do you get them just beyond saying, like, oh, we need to be nice, we need to be kind. It's not just that. There's more to it, and that's where these 24 character strengths come from, or lead to, I should say, is that it's more than just being nice and being kind, which is just kind of like a default answer, right? So it is loving God, it is loving others. That's other people matter, right? That is the gospel. And so if we're looking to draw connections, that phrase "other people matter," that's pretty explicit right there. Other people matter. That is the gospel. One of our teachers said, they've had conversations where it's actually been really valuable and really helpful when they, a first grader or 6-year-old, they might not really know the word gratitude. I'll just use gratitude for an example. I put that in there. But you have to place that word to make it have some weight and meaning. You place that word on top of a feeling. So, that feeling that just made you smile and felt all warm and fuzzy inside, that's gratitude. Place that on. So let them feel it first, and then rather than, kind of giving a word in the definition, let them feel it first, and then you place that word on top of it. But one of the things that's really that is necessary for that is the teachers have to have this as part of their vocabulary, so they can identify that moment where that kid is feeling that feeling of gratitude and be able to name it right in that moment. So the strength of the program is really on consistent exposure of these terms and these concepts. And so teachers have to have some kind of familiarity with it and be able to don't bring up gratitude just in Gratitude Week or bravery just in Bravery Week. That needs to be part of our vocabulary, which I think Melissa alluded to just a few minutes ago. And that, so our staff has to model that, and has to model that within our conversations. We as school leaders need to model that in our faculty meetings. How often can we weave in some P2 character strengths into our conversations within our faculty meetings? And then the other thing is, I'm going to talk about community within community here in just a minute too, but that's part of loving others, is getting out there into the community and into the world and serving others. And so we have our mission experiences that are led by our houses, but we also have something we call Student Leadership Academy, which we use the P2 middle school elective materials. We use that to help us guide conversations with our Student Leadership Academy. But their mission experiences, while our houses, they have mission experiences out in the world, the way we've designed our Student Leadership Academy is their service project, their mission experience is us. It's the kids that are in the building right now. How are we serving our kids that are in the seats right now? And how are we making this school better for next year? And what legacy are we leaving? So it's serving our school and our kids that are in the building. And so we're serving, our school, but also we're looking at ways to serve the community as well. And so the biggest thing that I did want to share today was just how we built out our middle school house system, and how we've explicitly and pretty tightly tied in community and service, but also Positivity Project and our Catholic faith and our traditions. And so we do have this idea of community within community. Our middle school is 180 kids, 60 per grade level, and it just works out that we have 2 homerooms per grade level, so that's 6. But what we've done is we've divided them into, there's 30 kids in each of these houses. And they're mixed between 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. So there's 36th graders, 37th graders, and 38th graders. Because one of the things we recognize that in a school like ours, and I'm sure a lot of you are the same way, a lot of the kids are here for 10 years. If they're here in pre-K, they're here for 10 years and they're with the same kids for 10 years. But when we get into this middle school house system, you're kind of mixing up some of those groups. And so you already have this really tight-knit community within your grade level, but we're trying to find other communities within this community of St. Michael. And that was one of the drivers of this house system. But when we were trying to figure out how we were going to divide all of this out and what we were going to name them, we had 6 houses, and it just so happened there's 6 virtues, right, for P2. And so it worked out really well. And so we took those 6 virtues and we took some time to identify 6 saints that could become the patron saints of those 6 houses that kind of embodied, their charism embodied that virtue, right? And so, St. Catherine Drexel, she had that one quote. So that we also put a quote in there that kind of identifies that house. But not all do not go by the same path. Catherine Drexel, she's known for setting up these schools for Native Americans and African Americans and people out on the margins and giving away her family's wealth to support this work. And she recognized that not all go by the same path. That is open-mindedness, right? And that is perspective, and that is curiosity. Recognizing that is perspective, and it is open-mindedness. Saint Oscar Romero, and all of these have just wonderful, wonderful stories. And if you don't know these saints, you should. They're just have great stories, and that's part of the beauty of this, is that the kids get to know these stories. And St. Oscar Romero, he says that there's that phrase, do something and do it well, but it's part of a bigger thought that, we can't do everything for everybody, but we can do something, and we got to find that something and then be really good at it. But also recognizing that if you're not good at some of these things, other people are. And so you lean into your strengths, but you rely on others and their strengths. That is teamwork. Right. And so we've taken these 6 saints and we've really fleshed it out and made very explicit connections between their life, their story, their charism, why they're so important to our faith tradition, but then also how it connects to Positivity Project, the virtues, the character strengths, and then also building this community within the community. That's one of the highlights that we do. That the ways that we connect our Catholic tradition and Positivity Project. Each one of these 6 houses also has one of those a mission experience, and so it may be St. Francis of Assisi. They partner with our operations on campus, and they work with our operations team to beautify our campus, and they also go across the street to Bond Park, where they call it Adopt a Spot, but it's similar to Adopt a Highway, right? They've adopted a portion of Bond Park to keep that nice and neat and tidy and beautiful for all to enjoy. We also, the Porras House is working with a group called Just Trying It that's raising, that group raises money for families that have children going through cancer treatments, and so it's just raising money for families to support those families. We have your UNC and Duke hospitals, and Wake Med are just massive hospitals that are research-based hospitals, and they have lots of people come from all over the world for treatment at these hospitals, and so they're displaced families, and they're here, and they're in a moment of triage and despair in a lot of ways. And so Just Trying It as a group that helps to support those families. And Porras House has adopted that ministry as theirs. And so each one of these has their own mission experience. And as I said, we're kind of in a bit of a rebuilding phase. And so our houses are reconnecting with these groups and rebuilding what these mission experiences look like. But the idea is that they're going to set this up and start some momentum, and then they're going to carry the rest of all the other grade levels with them, and the families from 3rd grade and 2nd grade and 1st grade and the kindergarten families. And so it's not just them doing this work. they're setting the ground, they're making the connections and they're having the conversations and setting it all up, but they're becoming leaders and leading the rest of our school community into this work and into this mission experience. So it's all tied together. And that's one of the things I wanted to share with you all, and just maybe a moment of encouragement too, that it's really easy to make some of these connections because of the way P2 is designed. It's not really explicitly, they don't say it in a lot of the P2 resources, but it's there. The values of our faith are just built in and woven into everything that P2 does. And so that's what I have to share, Mike. And I'm happy to have more of a conversation and answer some questions if that's something we want to do.
Yeah, I was gonna say, the only thing I would say before, maybe taking any questions, is just building on this. I will just kind of share my own personal story a little bit. So I graduated from Christian Brothers Academy in Syracuse, sort of lifelong cradle Catholic, and I knew very little, of the saints. So one of the books that we read at the breakfast table every morning in my house right now is the Saint for a Day book, and it's a 1-page, and it just goes over, on their feast day, each saint, and it is amazing to me. I think all of us out here, who know about the stories of the saints. There's a lot of inspirational people alive today, but when you're talking to people who have given their life, who have laid down their life, John 15:13 stuff, like for Jesus, for their, people who they're living life with. When you think about like in Auschwitz, in Vietnam, like Father Vincent Capodanno. I'm not sure you can find better, more powerful examples, men and women, lots of them from all over the world, right, with all different backgrounds, than you can in the saints. And I think all of us here on this call know that, but I think this is so powerful because as you think about role models and how we, work to develop children, in their faith, but also knowing how to have the character strengths needed to live a life worthy of becoming a saint. There's just no more powerful vehicle than this. And so I just love what you guys have done, Matt, up there at St. Michael's, because like, it's just, it hits home for me personally, as I think about this in my own life, in my own kitchen, as I talk to my kids about this and thinking about the power of when they can recall a saint and like what that saint, did that, that earned them sainthood. So I think it's something that lots of other schools here can certainly bring to life. So yeah, would love to hear any questions. I know people are often not very talkative on Zooms or Google Hangouts, but this is a small crew here. We got 21 people, so I'd love to hear what questions people might have for Matt, myself, or anyone on the P2.
I often use the phrase "standing on the shoulders of giants" with the saints, right? Standing on the shoulders of giants of our faith. And I guess one thing, as you were thinking, one thing I also want to share is that this wasn't just something that I did on my own, just sitting at my desk, and I just typed all this out and I said, "Here, do this." It was very intentional and it was very purposeful, and we did engage the kids and our house leaders, which are our middle school team, teaching team. But it was very purposeful and very intentional. And there was a process that took weeks to get to where we are, and to build the buy-in and to learn who Oscar Romero is and St. Martin de Porres, and everybody knows St. Peter, but really, who is he and how does this connect, right? And so it was very intentional, and if you're interested, we can talk a little bit more about the process that we went through. We even had like a charism audit that really had a lot of really meaningful questions and prompts just to kind of get people thinking about things, and so that they got to a point where they understood who their saint was. They understood how it made their house was going to make St. Michael a better place, how they were going to make St. Michael community a better community. And so it was very intentional, and there was a process. It wasn't just something that I just thought it was a good idea and just threw it out there. I did think it was a good idea, but I didn't want it to just be me, right? I let it kind of happen a little bit more organically than that. And so it was led by the kids, and it was led by the team upstairs.
Yeah, absolutely. Love to hear what questions people have.
Yeah, thank you so much, Matt and Mike. Again, we'll open up for questions. If you'd like to drop something in the chat, raise your hand, or just shout out, any of that works. Again, we have a relatively small group today, and this is being recorded. So happy to answer any questions or talk through maybe anything Matt mentioned more specifically, so we can share that out as well. Matt, would you be willing to talk through the charism inventory a bit more? I think that may be something folks may be interested in. I know that when you showed that to me, it really connected the dots really beautifully.
Yeah, and is that something you want me to pull up and show, or I can just talk through it? I mean,
Either way, whichever works best for you.
So I guess so. The whole process, what we did, and like I said, we were in a little bit of a rebuilding year this year, so we wanted to get buy in to all of this, and so this year we started the very first week of school, and just to backtrack, we do meet with houses once a week, and we always meet right before school mass, and so we meet, we already talk, and we have some conversations, we build that community, whatever the activity is for the day, and then we actually go to mass in our houses. We sit in our houses when we go to our school mass on Wednesday mornings. But what we did from the very beginning of this school year to kind of get that momentum back was we did some of the work that I'm not sure if people are familiar with Tim Cook, but he's done a lot of things with charism and Catholic school culture, and so we used some of his work to help inform some of these conversations, and just kind of building some baseline idea of what we're trying to do and what we're trying to accomplish. But then we went through that inventory, your own inventory of your own character strengths, right? Trying to get a better understanding of who you are. And so we call that, like, that's your charism, right? Using that word loosely. But you understanding your charism, who you are, who your identity is, where your strengths are. And the way we always talk about it is that I think we all have all of these 24 character strengths, right? But we just may be stronger in some than others. So we took that inventory, so they understood where they as individuals fall. But then they also had to understand what a charism is, right? So we defined that. But then they also needed to know once they were assigned to their house, which was random. We have a big, wild, and crazy day where we do this house sorting. It's kind of like Harry Potter, but it's a lot goofier and a lot more colorful. It's a fun day, but it is random sorting, and they just get placed into a house, and it is random. And once you're in that house in 6th grade, that's your house for 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. So you kind of build that is building that community within that community, because you're in there for 3 years. That's your house. That's your identity. But if you are in that Romero house or in that Kateri house, you got to know who Kateri is, and you got to know her story, and you got to know why she's so important, what made her so special that she's canonized, right? And so we spent some time getting to know who those saints were and their charism, and then trying to make that connection. And that's where this audit came in that we talked about. And it is asking, knowing what you know about St. Kateri, knowing what you know about our values here as a school, what unmet need does your house meet? That was one of the questions. What unmet need is your house going to meet? How are you going to make St. Michael better? And then, what sets your house apart from the other 5? If you know about St. Kateri and you also know about St. Oscar Romero or some of the others, how is your house set apart? What unique contribution is your house making? And so there's some redundancy in some of these questions, but it's just maybe phrasing them in different ways just to help them think. They're just prompts. It's just to help them think about things as they process what their house is all about and what their charism is all about and how they make St. Michael better. And then out of this came a elevator pitch, if you will. They understand who they are, how they're making the community better. And so if Father Michael, if one of our priests walks in, or if a visitor walks in, if Mike Erwin walks in, they'll be able to say, hey, we're St. Kateri House and this is what we're about. And everybody's able to say that. And so they have this identity. They have that that mission statement, even just for not just for the school, but for their house, that they know who they are and what they're doing and what they're about and how they're making our school better. So there was a process, and it took weeks. We eventually got to a point where we did there was a week back in the fall where our priests were out on retreat, and so we weren't going to have school mass. So instead, we did a prayer service that was led by our 6 houses, and where there was representatives from each of the six houses, and they kind of unveiled some of this work. And so they taught our school, the rest of our student body, and any parents and staff that were in attendance about their saint. But then they made that connection between that saint and P2, and also our mission and how they're making St. Michael better. And so it was a really great day. And it was really neat. There were a lot of people that came away saying, I had no idea. Right. And so it was a really great day. And I think that was a good day. It got some of that momentum back that maybe we had lost over the last 2 years.
Thank you, Matt. We have a couple of questions coming through in the chat. So I'll start with Elena. She had asked about if you have an existing house system, how you might recommend incorporating P2. So since you all started kind of with P2, you've been a partner for a while, what suggestions might you have for somebody who's doing it the other way around?
Yeah, that is a good question. And that's right. We had P2 first and then the house. P2 was 7 years ago, and the house system, we started that in 2018, and that was just kind of in its infancy. The 2019 and 20 year really started getting some traction, and then it also got blown up in the spring of that year. So that's another thing that we're really trying to rebuild. But we had, just from even its inception, we had our Catholic identity and P2 built in. It was kind of built together. But I would say, like I said before, finding those virtues of P2 are the virtues of our faith. Those character strengths. And one of the things that I was actually going to mention to this crew was, maybe if we all were able to work together. One of the things that I've kind of tasked some of our houses with is identifying, scripture and other quotes that go direct. We have quotes that go with our saints in our houses, but I want to more tightly connect some of the character traits with scripture verses and have something to point to. But I would say starting there and making that connection, taking each character strength and finding how that does connect to our faith. And so I'm not sure who asked that question, but depending on how the houses are built out and how they're identified, I think it's really easy for us, because they're identified as saints. It's really easy to make that connection, right? But it is all baked in, so it does make it easy that way.
Hi, it was me. My name is Ileana. I'm at St. Ignatius in Los Angeles. We have an existing house system that is based on the Dominican charism. So we have the house of study, the house of prayer, the house of community, and the house of service. And we have Dominican saints tied in. We have also not rolled it out completely because we started in 2019 and then everything kind of went wacky. Exactly. So I just would love to know how. So would it be fair to say that the houses could meet and do these activities or lessons? I'm still not kind of clear on how P2 is incorporated.
We do. P2 isn't always, so we only meet houses once a week. And so it is in the rest of the week, they are in standard homerooms by grade level. And so that's where they get, that daily, they'll get that daily interaction, that daily exposure at that time for the most part. Like I said, we've been encouraging all of our teachers, the strength of the program, remember, is like having it as part of your vocabulary. It just needs to be woven in throughout the day. It's good to have that 10 minutes a day where you can really sink into it, but the value is really where you can work it into your vocabulary and work it into your everything you do. But yeah, we do the P2 as homerooms throughout the rest of the week. But then you get into those 4 or 5 character strengths of your house. You dig a lot deeper into those, and you just identify more strongly with those when you're in your house.
I see. So it's kind of like finding out what the character traits of the P2 system is, how they match up to your house, and then kind of letting those be the focus in
Well,
those
we
house meetings.
actually, it's one of those things we didn't try to reinvent the wheel. We found that for example, excuse me, like the Kateri house, we tied her to is the P2 virtue of temperance. But under temperance, in the P2 resources, under temperance are those 4 character strengths. And so it's already kind of baked in and tied in.
Right.
So we didn't reinvent the wheel in that way.
Right. So it'd be a matter of just looking at what ours are and how that fits into our, like, which of those houses do those things fit into, so that we could incorporate them.
And it worked out, like I said, it worked out easily because we had 6 houses. There's 6 virtues from the P2, resources. You said you had 4, right, from the Dominican virtue?
Yeah, we have 4, but there are some virtues within our houses that are across in all of them, so that we could try to develop that, focus on those really important ones. Yeah. But I see what you're saying, though. It's like a daily practice, and then the house kind of reinforces some aspects of it.
But I'm happy to share this audit. Like I said, some of it's mine, some of it's I've stole from other things. But I'm happy to share it. But it's just one of those like thought inventories, thought exercises. They're just conversation starters and prompts to help you start thinking about things. But I think maybe as you're talking about your house system, maybe it's one of those things where it's not just nice and clean, where temperance has these 4 character strengths, right? Maybe your 4 houses, maybe it is kind of picking others that make sense for your 4 houses, right? But going through that thought exercises helps to identify some of those, right?
That would be great. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. We have another question about the houses and how they correspond to grade levels. So Seema asked if the houses are for middle school or for the lower grades. Are TK through 4th grade in the houses as well. So Matt, I know we've talked about this, but I'll let you speak to the involvement of the littles in all of this as well.
Yeah. Our house system is formally is just middle school, and so you get sorted into your house on your very first day of 6th grade, right? That's one of the big fancy things of that first day of school. And so you get sorted into the house. So the middle school house system is just 6th, 7th, and 8th grade, but they do partner with the lower grades, and you have the buddy system, but it's through our houses. And so they'll go down and they will do, they may read stories with 3rd grade. They may do other things throughout the day, but they're also, this is part of that rebuilding thing that, we've lost some momentum with, but we're getting back to the point where they are leading in these mission experiences. And if nobody's following you, you're not leading anybody, right? And so the whole point is to get some of these younger grades and some buy-in to their mission experience and getting them involved as well. And so they're working with those younger grades and pulling them into the mission experiences and then just getting involved and getting to know them and building positive relationships with those younger grades just by going and reading with them, or scheduling a time where they have the Romero house and 2nd grade might have, they just build in time throughout on a random day out on the playground, right? And they're just out hanging out with each other and building positive relationships, just spending time together. And so they do make that connection and that relationship, but a 4th grader's not in a house. They might be working with a house for a different mission experience, but they get sorted in their house when they're in 6th grade.
Excellent. Thank you so much for clarifying. Well, we have a few minutes left on the call. Any final questions or thoughts from anyone before we close today?
If there's any other questions, I would just kind of weigh in real briefly about something that Matt talked about, which is this, this idea of service learning. One of the big things we do at Father Capodanno is on Wednesday, like we serve in the community, we volunteer for 3 hours, and we partner with, different, the St. Anthony's Food Pantry and different, the Life Care Pregnancy Center in places, throughout Moore County. But I think there's tremendous power, in like the experiential learning side of life. And anytime you can bring the character strengths to life for students. And so like I love a lot of what you guys talk about, Matt, about how you can take these character strengths and then deploy them for actual impact, in the community, in people's lives. And I think that is such an important part of this, that these are not seen as like just things that you read about in a book or you see or you study in somebody, but also that that at the end of the day, and this for me brings it back to the idea of like, love God, love your neighbor, right? Like the whole idea of like, how are you showing that and bringing it to life at the end of the day is what we're judged for, and in the service learning opportunity and how you can deploy it, especially in the middle school level, feels like a big opportunity. I mean, I remember when I was at Christian Motors Academy, like I was in charge of like the food drives, around Thanksgiving, and like talking to people about this is why you're bringing this, why you're making this additional effort to go buy cans of food or to bring it in, is because you're serving other people. So I don't know if there's any follow-on questions, but I just wanted to kind of at least put a bow on my thoughts on that. About at the end of the day, this is not about like lots of subjects are in school, like we learn and we take tests and we prove our knowledge, right? But this is really about life, and about living life. And so I would say that like what we're talking about here transcends really just about anything else, that we often do in the school setting. And when you integrate it in and you tie it into the faith, right, then it gives people the ability to both better understand it, but also to better point to, this is why, right? This is why, I'm a Catholic. This is why I'm at a Catholic school.
Yeah. One of our poorest house, he said, compassion, my dear brothers, is preferable to cleanliness. Love is preferable to cleanliness. Sometimes you got to get your hands messy. Sometimes you got to get your hands dirty, but that's better than not, right? And so, and that's one of those things. Like when you identify these things and you find these things and something that works for your house and works for your school, and you've got this fleshed out, and you've got buy-in from the students and the teachers and their families. It does become part of your vocabulary and the way you do things, and the why you do things, right? And so you can point back to that Porras quote that compassion is preferable to cleanliness. That's why we're doing this, right? And that's school culture 101, right? That you can say, this is why we're doing this, right? And so it's just been really, really beneficial for us to have this as an anchor, and to have something to point to. We can point to our handbook, but there's nothing fancy or nice about a handbook, right? Handbooks are handbooks, but this is beautiful, yeah, right? And so it's and people can buy into this and really relate to this a lot more. So it's nice to have just nice to have this as an anchor, and something to point to.
Love it.
Well, thank you both again. We hope that this is the first conversation of many. We are partnering with Catholic schools in particular at a growing rate. And so we're just so excited to connect with you all and hopefully continue this conversation. There's a bit.ly up on the screen, and I'm going to go ahead and just drop a direct link, if that's easier, to a quick Google form. You don't have to do it right now, but if you want to open it up so you have it for later, it just asks you to indicate your interest in continuing this conversation, continuing to network with other folks across the country that are working at Catholic schools and leveraging P2 in different ways. I know Matt mentioned specifically the interest around connecting scripture to virtues and strengths. And so if that or the house system or just any other ideas that you have, you'd like a community to share that with, we'd like you to indicate your interest in doing so. So again, just take a moment to fill that out at your convenience. This was recorded once again, so we'll go ahead and send this link to you so you have it and you can share it with your teams. And then if you have further questions, I'll also go ahead and put my email in the chat and we'll be in touch. But thank you all so much for your time today, and I hope you have a happy holiday.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Mike. Thank you, Melissa.
Bye.
Thank you so much, everyone.